Hey guys, I am Dani and this is Summer Skye Gardens. I figured this would be a great day to come outside and record because we've had such beautiful weather the last couple of days, and it's got me all excited that I went ahead and planted my summer annuals. So my warm season flowers that are going to grow kind of from the end of spring through the fall, and I thought I would share with you what all I'm growing this year and how I kind of figure out what things to put together, where to plant them, how much, and when to plant them. And hopefully this will give you some tips if you're starting to plan out your own gardens or farms for this year. As always, if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up and go ahead and subscribe to my channel. That way you don't miss out on my next videos. So first thing I like to do when I'm thinking about planning out my season of flowers is kind of go through my list of everything that I already have. So I have a ton of seeds as well as bulbs and corms and things like that that I keep track of on a spreadsheet. And let me give you a closer look. So if you'll see here, this will say the type of plant, the variety, where I bought it from, what year, and then my seed storage. Because I have so many seeds, I use jewelry bead containers, and that way I can see very quickly how many seeds I have and make sure that they're still dry and look viable. I did have an issue this year where I found some bluebonnet seeds that had molded, and I was able to see that very quickly in the container and get rid of them. Anyways, so I like to kind of go through, and what I'll do, since most things are either going to be cold weather versus warm weather, I like to go through and just list out everything that's warm weather that I want to grow. I might have some seeds that I'm skipping this year or that I tried last year and they didn't do very well. I still like to keep them on my list, and I'll just make a note by them, you know, hey, don't buy this again or don't grow this again, because there's so many varieties. Sometimes you'll forget and you'll try something and be like, dang it, I have tried this before and it did not work. So it's always good to keep good notes of everything. One example of something that I'm not growing this year are cosmos. And I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for that because a lot of people love cosmos, but I have never been able to harvest them at the right time to get them to last in bouquets. I think if you're doing wedding work where they only need to stay pretty, or an event where they only need to stay good for like a day or two, they're perfect, they're beautiful, they grow fine here. And I have used them more for foliage versus the actual flower, but I find it really hard to catch them when they're at that right opening stage or barely closed stage where they're going to last for a few days in the vase. So there's too many other things that I want to grow, so I'm skipping those this year. So once I get a master list of everything I want to grow, then I start kind of pairing up, you know, what are going to be my focal flowers, what are going to be some accents, what are going to be some greenery and fillers, because I want to think throughout the year, you know, what is going to be blooming at the same time to start making bouquets and arrangements. You don't want to have 100 sunflowers come on with nothing to put them with if your goal is to make like a mixed market bouquet. You can do that if you're wanting to sell straight bunches to florists or straight bunches at the markets, but on average, you're going to be, you know, selling a lot more mixes. So you want to make sure you have a mix of plants throughout the year. Then once that's done, I kind of start going through my beds and figuring out, you know, okay, how much of each type of plant do I need? Where's a good spot in my beds to plant them in? I am a micro grower. I have like a couple of 100 square feet. So I really need to be thoughtful on utilizing my spacing, growing very intensively within the space, as well as throughout the season. I don't like to have any kind of soil that is unused at any moment in time. So if something's not doing well, I'll yank it out. If something is done, I will immediately plant something new. So my mind is constantly thinking about, okay, when is this plant going to be done? Is there something I can plant after that to utilize my growing season so that space is not sitting empty? So I grow in raised beds in my backyard, as well as a large front flower bed, and I just squeeze in stuff wherever I can. One tip, the more plants you grow, the less weeds you grow. So if I have an open space, I would much rather that be growing a cut flower or a vegetable or something useful as opposed to weeds. All right, so let me take you through my raised beds, how I'm gonna put everything in. I'm also gonna discuss what I'm gonna be growing in grow bags and crates, because that's something I've added this past year. And then if there's anything that I'm gonna be planting out front. So my first bed is bed 1, and it is an 8x4 bed. It's my largest bed in the back, and I'm gonna be growing sunflower, celosia, and amaranth in this area. I wanted to pair things together that were really big, that won't be shading each other out. So I'm gonna be using half the space for sunflowers, which I'll be succession planting, and then the other half for the celosia and the amaranth. I only have 2 varieties of amaranth, so I'm kind of keeping that to a small space. I have more of the celosia that I'm going to want to use, so that's why I picked more space for the celosia. And then the sunflowers, I want a ton of sunflowers. I need to be turning them over fast, planting every week, so I'm utilizing a big chunk of space for that. Now, as far as varieties, you know, if you're growing just one variety, it's very, very simple, but who wants to do that? There's so many beautiful varieties of plants out there, and you want to, you know, try to think about your seasons. Usually in the spring, people want more lighter pastel romantic colors, so like your soft pinks and peaches and yellows and whites and creams. And then as summer approaches, you're going to want more like bright fun colors, so hot pink, orange, yellow, purple, lime green, that kind of stuff. And then as you get toward the end of summer and into fall, you want like those rich golden tones of the reds and oranges and yellows, burnt oranges, and then maybe some deeper colors like amethyst or dark purple. Those are going to pair really nicely together. So when you're thinking about growing certain varieties and maybe your succession planting, think about throughout the course of the year, what are going to be the better colors that are going to grow at that time of year to sell, and then what's also going to pair really well together. You don't want to plant hot pink zinnias with like a burnt orange celosia if it's not going to look well together. You want to be thinking about all your plants, the color scheme, how everything is going to fit at any given moment throughout the season. Now, pretty much I believe the only thing that I'm direct sowing outside are my sunflowers. Towards the beginning of the growing season, I'm going to be sowing more lighter colors like the Pro Cut White Light, Pro Cut White Night, Pro Cut Gold Light, and the Orange Sun Double. And then later in the season, I'm going to start transitioning into the Pro Cut Red Lemon, the Pro Cut Red, Pro Cut Plum, and then the Ruby Eclipse. So lighter colors and then more to like richer, darker colors. And then in the front, I'm going to plant a few mammoths because those are always fun, not for cutting, but more for just my pollinators. And then some Evening Sun and Paquito. Those don't ever grow long enough to really use in arrangements, and they have a lot of pollen, but I always like to plant some stuff for the pollinators. The bees love them, the birds love them. I think they're super pretty in the landscaping. Now, things like my celosia and my amaranth, those are good plants to start inside. So I actually just did that yesterday. My first succession of everything that's going to be going in the garden, I started yesterday. They're going to grow inside until the end of February, first week of March, and then I'll be transplanting them outside. That should be about when we're getting our last frost. And so I know I'll have them all ready to go and kind of get a jump start on the season. So my celosia, I'm going to do 2 successions. So this first one will go out now, and then probably between March and April, I'll start a second one inside. That'll go out end of May or June. So, and that's going to be a lot of my plants. I'll have one and then a second succession. Some I might do a third. So my first succession, I'm growing, you know, the lighter, prettier colors, and then I'm transitioning to like the bright, more fun colors or fall colors. So my celosia, I'm going to start with some Fruit Punch and Pampas Plume. And then the second succession, I'm going to go into the Sunday Gold and the Sunday Orange. And then the amaranth, I'm going to start with Velvet Curtains, which is a darker color, but I think it'll pair really prettily with some of the lighter colored flowers. And then I'm going to, the second succession, I'm going to be planting Hibiscus, which is more of like a brownish color, which I think will be really pretty later in the season with, you know, some sunflowers and Rudbeckia and marigolds and stuff like that. All right, my next two beds, my second and third beds, are gonna be all zinnias. I probably don't need quite this many zinnias, but I love them. I wanna grow a ton of different varieties, and every year I like to try new varieties out, so I wanna devote a lot of space. I feel like you can't really ever have too many zinnias. You can always pack more in a bouquet. People love them. They're a great flower. They're an easy flower to grow. And typically my zinnias, I'll do 3 successions, which I'm gonna do in one of the beds. The other bed, instead of a 3rd succession of zinnias, I'm gonna put in some marigolds. But I find that the zinnias, after about 3 months, their production slows down. They start to get powdery mildew. So it's good to have another batch, you know, ready to transplant outside to kind of get some fresh blooms. So now zinnias, you wanna plant 1 per square foot. So you can see here, this is bed 2 and then bed 3. So my first round, I'm gonna be planting Purity White, Oklahoma Ivory, Oklahoma Pink, mixed Lilliput, Queen Lime Blush, Lilliput Salmon, Cinderella Peach, and then one that I'm calling Fluffy Cream, which is one that I isolated from last year. I wanna see how it grows this year from some saved seed. So those will go out in March, and then around that same time, I'll start my second succession of zinnias. So we're gonna kind of transition to the brighter, more fun colors. I'm gonna have Oklahoma Salmon, Queen Lime Orange, a mix of Burpee Giants, some Canary Bird, which are really pretty yellow, some Cactus Jewels, and some Macarenia. And then after, in bed 2, after that second section is kind of petering out, I'm gonna be putting in some Cracker Jack marigolds. The zinnias and the marigolds I start inside and then transplant. They do just fine doing that. And then my third round of zinnias, I'm gonna be planting some more Macarenia and then some Candy Mix and Queen Lime Orange. I'll probably start a few extras of some different varieties and throw them in my front flower beds. They always grow really well out there, and I think that they look really nice, and people always comment on them when they drive by. They're also great pollinating plants. The bees and especially the butterflies love them, so I like to have a good batch of them out front to just kind of leave alone and give back to my wildlife. All right, bed 4, I'm gonna be growing something new this year, and that is Mahogany Splendor Hibiscus. So this is a really rich, like maroon looking foliage. It's supposed to grow really well. It's a great like filler foliage plant for your bouquets. So you start that inside, and I'm gonna be doing 1 succession of that. And then I'm gonna devote half of this bed as well to basil. Last year I grew basil really well in grow bags, which I'm gonna do again, but I'm also gonna devote some bed space because you just can't have too much greenery and filler, and basil does really well here. So this is my plan, and each of those needs a lot of space, so just kind of 1 per square foot. And then the basil, I'm gonna be planting lemon and cinnamon, which are 2 really good varieties for cut flowers. All right, guys, so I'm actually on a different day to finish this video. My microphone had died the other day when I was filming. So here I am to kind of finish out the last little bit. So moving on to bed 5. In this bed, I decided to grow gomphrena and strawflower. So I've never actually grown strawflower before, and I probably should have started it in the fall, but I just didn't have enough room. There was too much other things I wanted to grow, so I decided to do a, really early start right now and see how it does over the year. And then I'm also growing gomphrena, which a little bit of gomphrena goes a long way. So I'm kind of just doing half of the bed in one and half in the other, and doing 1 per square foot because they really kind of branch out and spread out. The gomphrena, both of these I'm going to start inside, and I'm just going to do 1 succession of each and see how they do. The gomphrena, I'm going to be doing 2 of the Audrey White, 2 of the Raspberry Cream, and 2 of the Carmine. And then the strawflower, I'm going to be doing 3 of the Raspberry Rose and 3 of the King Mix. So yeah, I think we'll have some good colors, and both of these also make really good dried flowers. So whatever I don't end up using in my arrangements, I will definitely dry and use those later in the year for different flower crafts. All right, my last raised bed is going to be all cress, which I've not grown before, but it's a wonderful greenery, a wonderful filler. I'm going to be doing several successions of this, all starting inside, and doing a mix of Persian and emerald beads and putting in 4 per square foot. To my knowledge, cress are one and done, so you want to make sure that you are growing a lot and kind of over and over and over again, kind of like the sunflowers. But I'm excited because so many people rave about cress, and I'm really excited to see how it grows here. And then just kind of throughout my front flower bed, I'll be probably direct sowing a bunch of sunflowers, putting some zinnias up there, maybe some more celosia or cosmos. I do have cosmos and zinnias up there that kind of like reseed every year. Right now I have a ton of wildflowers that are growing, so kind of see how those go into the summer. But like I said, anywhere I can stick a plant, I will. And then the rest of the backyard, I have my pollinator garden, which I tend to not cut from. That's strictly just for my pollinators. I might take a little bit of salvia or bee balm, mainly to dry, but try to leave most of it for my bees and butterflies. And then I have a large rose garden, which in the past I haven't cut from to use in bouquets because they're young rose bushes, but they put on a lot of growth. See how they do this year, if I'm actually going to use those or keep them for myself. And then I have a bunch of grow bags and crates. In the crates, I'm actually going to grow dahlias. I did them in grow bags and raised beds last year, but I have these crates now and I needed something to put in them, so I figured dahlias will be a good choice. And depending on the heat and the light and stuff over the summer, if I need to move them to a more shady spot, then that'll be a lot easier to do in a crate versus if they're in the bed already. And then in the grow bags, like I said before, I'll be doing a bunch of basil as well as some mountain mint. And then I have my mums that I grew last year. They've overwintered in some smaller grow bags, so I'm just gonna keep those there and see how they grow over the summer and into the fall. It was a variety called Kelvin Mandarin, and it was really pretty, especially come the fall time. So that is it. That is everything I am growing this year. So I hope that gave you some good ideas, maybe some tips on how to plan out and how much to grow of certain things. And just remember, you don't have to have a huge amount of space to have a cut flower garden or flower farm. You can do it like me in a very small space, as long as you think about planting intensively, both within your space and within your growing season. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.